The international break is nearly at an end. We've got a few days left to survive, and then it's back to action with Arsenal returning for the North London derby. But we've got some injury news. We're just hoping and praying it's positive. This is the Arsenal transfer show. No, it's not. It's the Arsenal news show. First time I've put that up. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of what is the Arsenal News Show. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me and making this a part of your morning routines. It is incredibly appreciated. I hope you had a fantastic weekend, and I hope that things are going well for you as well. Without further ado, let's jump into the chat box and see what you guys and girls are saying. Good morning in the chat to Kevin, to Tom, to Paul, to Damien, to James, Knowledge, Granddaddy Gooner, Luke, Matt G, Paul. We've got Carlton, we've got Sweat and Merlot, we've got Franklin, Barry T, Stephen, Maximius, Amira, another Paul, Ajiti, Clincy, Mark, Arasilki, Process, Jamil, and plenty more of you guys and girls as well. Thank you always for tuning in. I know you appreciate the random names that I read out at the start of the show because, you know, screw the haters is what I say. Good morning, though, to all of you else that are catching up as well, perhaps on audio platforms. If you could be ever so kind to drop a like on the video to be able to say that we managed to continue our great run, despite the fact that the international break has continued to threaten to end our challenge, is another brilliant achievement. Today's show, however, will be slightly shortened. In fact, it'll be considerably shortened. It is Monday, and it's a Monday where I'm heading into the office today, so I've got to catch that train, and that's why it means always that these shows are going to be around 15 or so minutes long and considerably shorter than usual. So we better not waste any more time and jump straight into today's stories. We begin with Gyokeres. Where else can you begin at the moment during an international break where he continues to impress? 15 goal contributions so far this season, and he's added to that tally, or took it to that tally, with 2 goals against Estonia for Sweden. He's having an absolutely fantastic campaign already, and it's only the start of September. It does seem indeed that Arsenal could still be looking at Gyokeres. We know that they had an interest in him. We know that nobody decided to take the gamble of £84 million last summer. It may be indeed that they decide instead to do so next summer, but Sporting are also said to be looking at potentially agreeing a new contract with Gyokeres to try and extend or improve the current terms of his deal. But an amazing goal contribution tally that he has already got at this stage of the season. Another Arsenal-related international piece of news is David Raya. If you watched Spain's game yesterday against Granit Xhaka, Switzerland, of course, what we saw was a brilliant pass from David Raya, which led to Fabian Ruiz's second goal of the game, winning 4-1 overall on the day. They didn't actually have Granit Xhaka because he was sent off in their previous fixture. And then we saw another red card, despite the fact that it was sent off in the 20th minute. Robin Lenormand, being sent off in the 20th minute. Spain still managed to go on and win 4-1. They were leading 2-0 at the time of the red card, but still managed to go on to win the game 4-1 in rather impressive fashion. Switzerland without Xhaka, though, is a big blow. Let's just hope that Arsenal without Rice is not as damaging to us on Sunday. A couple more stories for you before we go to take your questions in part 2. Galatasaray are said to be among a number of teams that are looking to make some late moves in the market, and one of their targets, according to TalkSport, is Arsenal midfielder Jorginho. However, it is understood that Arsenal have absolutely zero interest in allowing Jorginho to leave the club at a late stage, in which, of course, they cannot replace him. And it makes complete sense that that would be the case because, of course, we are now short in midfield. We've got no Moreno, no Rice for our next game. The idea of losing Jorginho as well on top of that would just be unthinkable at this stage. So, thankfully, it does seem that despite these links, Arsenal will not be entertaining any offers for the Italian international. And the headline story of the day is on another Italian of our own, and that is Riccardo Calafiori. It broke yesterday morning, courtesy of Fabrizio Romano, that the player had indeed returned from the Italian national side to the Shobarilti training centre, and indeed he will not take any part in Italy's game against Israel this evening at 7:45 p.m. UK time, and he will be instead assessed by Arsenal's medical staff. That caused some element of panic throughout the Arsenal fan base, and understandably so. However, it is understood that it is not expected to be a serious problem. We'll keep our fingers crossed that we see him in the squad at the weekend, and that it's so, lacking in seriousness that he'll be indeed available for that game. Norway, meanwhile, of course, take on their match tonight as well, in which they will see whether or not Martin Ødegaard is ready to play in their next game. But we do know that that match against Austria tonight is expected to include Martin Ødegaard. He was speaking to the media this week and spoke pretty positively. So we hope indeed that we do see Ødegaard in the 11 in some ways, just to give us that, I suppose, what's the word? Assurance, if you like, that he'll be available and ready and fit. And then, of course, we've got to hope that he makes it through the game as well. So keep your fingers crossed for Martin Ødegaard tonight as Norway take on Austria. You should be taking on the opportunity, of course, to get yourself the best VPN service that is on the market. That, of course, is NordVPN. And by going to the link down in the description, or just by typing in nordvpn.com/Gooner, you can get yourself that significant discount off a 1 or a 2-year plan. You get 4 months extra thrown in free on top of that 2-year deal, with the chance to get a 30-day money-back guarantee if you're not happy with the service for whatever reason. I don't know why you would be, but it is there in case you certainly do need it. And the ability to change your digital geolocation on any of your tablets, on your mobiles, or indeed your laptops is just something that's an absolute must. Just like getting up-to-date Arsenal news, which you can, of course, always get every morning at 8 a.m. UK time. But not only that, but the deadline is very close to win that signed and framed Arsene Wenger Arsenal Messi 22 shirts, with the ability to win some instant win prizes as well, like a signed Pires shirt, a signed Edu shirt, or a signed Lee Dixon shirt. Don't miss out. Links down in the description. Massive thank you again to Football Prize for supporting the channel. Lovely stuff as always. Right, let's go to part 2 and your questions right after this. Okay, this is part 2 of the show where we tackle your questions for the next 6 minutes. Yes, it's a short show today, as I mentioned, for those that are joining us late to the party. I'm heading into the office. I can't miss my train, so you're going to have to allow me some patience and a quick turnaround for part 2. Just before I go to your questions in the chat box, make sure you're using a capital Q, and I'll do my best to tackle as many of those as I can. But yeah, please do drop a like, help us on our way to 1K every day. We need these in the short shows, because I understand that a lot of people sit like 10 minutes. I ain't tuning in for that. He's only given us 10 minutes. Well, still, please drop us a like. It is incredibly appreciated. Thank you very much. Right, let's jump to Akshat, shall we? And we start with his question. We will have to buy 2 attackers, 2 midfielders, who's to replace Partey and Jorginho, and potentially a goalkeeper next summer. There's going to be a lot to do next summer still, again, because of the churn of the squad, if you like, the turnover of the squad. But that was always expected. It was always expected that Partey and Jorginho would, of course, both move on between now and the end of the season. So that isn't a surprise to us, I don't think. My Blood in the chat says, can you shed some light on the rugby happening this weekend? No, because I don't cover it. Ashley says, theory on Jorginho. I asked Mikel why no minutes for Jorginho. He said this is the only time for 1 game a week. We need to build Partey up to sustain 90 minutes. After the international break, he will play plenty. It's a theory, I guess, as Ashley points out. I'm not sure if it's... I mean, I would have liked to have seen Jorginho come off the bench a little bit to get him some minutes, but perhaps they weren't, of course, expecting Declan Rice to not be available for the derby. So I guess that probably explains that part. Critical says, Tom, are you going to be at the North London derby on Saturday? I'm sadly going to miss the game as I'm on a flight at the same time. I will be watching the game on Sunday, not Saturday. Because that's when it is, not Saturday. I will be at a wedding this weekend, so I'm not working, but we are all going to be watching the game on the Sunday, so don't you worry. There will be, we won't be missing it. Maximir says, hi, Tom. Your view on the team using ticks report on Arsenal giving up on Osimhen chase way back in January due to his behavioural issues. I mean, interest in Osimhen has not really been of a kind of high standing for quite some time. I don't think that's necessarily an exclusive. I just think that that's just been the case, as we've known for quite a long period. Rob says, good on Italy for not being silly with Calafiori's injury. I hope Carsley is sensible with Saka and Rice as well, and the other international managers with our players too. Yeah, we'll see if indeed England decide to overuse Bukayo Saka in this coming week when they play against Finland. We've got to keep fingers crossed that they will be sensible with this, but you absolutely never know. Let's go to Bennis Durkamp says, yes, that's actually his name. Calafiori was that good against France that I think he needs to start on Saturday, assuming he is fit. Backfire with Calafiori and that free-ish role that he plays. Definitely an option that we could use. I think that Calafiori, if he indeed is fully fit, which we don't know whether or not he will be because we don't know the serious or the extent of this issue that has come up while playing with Italy. I think there is definitely an argument that he'll be breaking into the Arsenal team in the coming months, and we sincerely hope that he is able to do that because that's why we bought him, and he will be an asset to us moving forwards. IK says, seems Gyokeres is tearing up the place. His price is only going to go up. I don't think his price is going to change unless he signs a new deal. His price will remain that £84 million, 100 million euro release clause that existed, of course, in the previous summer window. Let's scroll a little bit more. It's Mosic says Gyokeres is looking fire, Tom. It's going to be a pricey target if the way it goes and it keeps going the way it is. Again, I don't think it necessarily changes. Sporting were never going to accept any less than the release clause this summer. They don't need to sell. They don't have to sell. They're a very wealthy club. They make a lot of money from the sales of their players. So they have no, position to stand on really to ask for less than that. The only way his price goes up, as I mentioned, is if he signs a new contract with an increased release clause, which he already spoke about. Interestingly, he actually did an interview recently where he said he felt that the release clause may have been too high, and that's what put clubs off. So why he would sign a new deal with an even higher release clause, I have absolutely no idea. Ajmal says, Tom, why do you think Arsenal were ready to take the gamble on Mudryk and pay big, but not for Gyokeres? I suppose it's different times, isn't it? It's different times of when the club have and haven't got money to spend. Arsenal really needed to bring in a wide player. In fact, there was much more of a desire to bring in a wide player then than there is to bring in a centre forward now. So they were convinced clearly that Mudryk was a very good talent at the time. And had they have signed him, I reckon his pathway would have been different. His performances would be different, of course, for Arsenal than they have been for Chelsea. I don't know how much different, but Chelsea have been an absolute mess for a lot of good players that have, of course, gone there. So they're different times in the market, different contexts, different periods where the club will or will not be willing to spend on certain positions. And they ultimately weren't willing to go big as necessarily it would have taken to get Mudryk because they weren't willing to go as high as what Chelsea were at the time. And Chelsea ended up paying a massive fee for the player and a fee which Arsenal ultimately weren't willing to go to. I think Arsenal ended their interest at, I don't know what Arsenal's biggest bid was. Arsenal bid third time for Mudryk. Let's have a look. 70 million euros, which is 30 million euros less than Gyokeres' release clause. So still quite significantly lower than what ultimately Arsenal were willing to offer for the Ukrainian. AFC Till I Die says Tom Ødegaard played a full 90 for Norway last week and got the player of the match. Has there been anything happening since then? There was suggestions, of course, that maybe he received an extra kind of kick or two after the Brighton game in that game. So we're hoping that we get some more updates tonight. Andrew says apparently Haaland had a stinker playing for Norway, wondering if he's holding back to avoid injury so he can be available to play for Man City. He's got a good goal record for Norway, but he doesn't really tend to kind of, from my perspective at least, like drag Norway anywhere to, like they've not qualified for tournaments. He's still not played at that level yet. So we're still waiting for Erling Haaland to really turn up for Norway in a big, big way. Mike says, do you think that we should insert release clauses in the next round of contracts for our players? Absolutely not. I don't need clubs coming along and just paying what they, what we've put in, unless you're going to put in like 500 million, 600 million, 1 billion release clauses like Barcelona do now after the Neymar debacle. Then I don't think that will change. Raditya says, last couple of points here. Players moving to a new club may or may not become a success on remove to Juve and can be considered a bust there, but came to Arsenal, became a legend that he is today. And RRDM finishes off the chat by saying competition for Gyokeres will be more next season. Arsenal may not be favourites. Sterling will help to ease that loss as well. Of course, there's going to be more interest in Gyokeres. Of course, there's going to be loads of clubs that are keen on him. Arsenal are positioning themselves as one of the best clubs in the world right now. We are positioning ourselves as a club that will be competing for the best players. And when you want to sign the best players, you have to deal with the fact that a lot of other teams want to sign those players too. That's just the reality of the market. That's the reality of being better. That's the reality of wanting the best. So it's not a surprise in any way, shape, or form. And Arsenal weren't willing to take a risk or weren't willing to spend that amount of money this window, and seemingly neither were any of the other big teams. They didn't feel as though either that Gyokeres was worth the risk this summer, nor were the other big teams willing to spend that amount of money on any players during this window, even, of course, with Alvarez going for such a huge sum from City. Right, thank you so much as always for tuning in. Apologies again for the shorter show today, but as I mentioned, I'm shooting off to get a train, so do forgive me for that. Do help us out by dropping a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning, bright and early, for a usual length show. And then looking forward, of course, to the next one. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.